This is America on the Road, named Best Radio Show by the International Automotive Media Conference, and now in its 27th year on the air. Thanks for being with us as we bring you the latest automotive information from around the world. A Scottish couple has plans to take a road trip from the North Pole to the South Pole, and they picked an interesting vehicle for the journey. Pretty interesting journey, I would think. We'll tell you all about that coming up. A new company is planning to offer virtual reality entertainment experiences for viewing in the car. We'll have details on that too, and probably some comment. America on the Road is brought to you by Mercury Insurance and DrivingToday.com. If you're looking to save some money, you should switch to Mercury for your auto and home insurance. Californians save an average of $670 with Mercury. So imagine how much you could save. Get a quote today at drivingtoday.com/auto insurance. That's drivingtoday.com/auto-insurance. Well, I'm Jack Nerad. With me is co-host Chris Teague. Chris lives at one end of the country. I live at the other. Each week we get together to talk about cars, the car industry, and how you can get the most out of your cars. Chris, you couldn't do the show last week because you hurt yourself, kind of in an unusual way. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, anybody listening under the age of 30, please take care of yourself before you reach almost 40. Just a shoulder injury, Jack, doing some yard work. You know, it's really funny. You don't ever expect it to happen. And then you wake up the next day and feel like you got hit by a bus. But I'll tell you what I wasn't doing last week is winning the lottery, because I scratched off several tickets and took all the numbers and didn't win $1. So
that's a shame. And did your dog have anything to do with this? I mean, I think you felt the symptoms when you were lifting your dog, right? And thought lifting the dog might have caused this.
Yeah, funny enough, my dog also has joint problems too, so he has to be picked up and put in the car. And picking him up, and my shoulder, felt something wrong with my shoulder, and the very next day, it was pretty rough. But glad to be back and not needing surgery, which was the big concern.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I had an interesting week because my new book, Dance in the Dark, was published on Sunday. It's now available on Amazon, so you might want to look for that. It's a suspense thriller, kind of a follow-up to my true crime book, Fatal Photographs. So look for that. You have a road test vehicle, Chris. What is it?
I drove the all-new, well, it's not all new this year, the 2023 Subaru BRZ. It's improved over the previous generation. I can't wait to tell you about it.
Yeah, and I will be road testing the all-new 2023 Nissan Ariya battery electric SUV. That's the secret answer to a question in this show. I had a chance to drive it during the North American Car of the Year testing in Michigan recently. I'll have a detailed report for you. We also have a great interview for you. Mark Bole is vice president and head of battery solutions for General Motors. So he has some interesting things to say. Before we do anything else, though, we'll be bringing you some of the most important auto information from around the world. So stay with us with Chris Teague. This is Jack Nerad. Stay with us right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with Chris Teague, and we're so glad Chris is back with us, and he doesn't need surgery. That's even better news. This is Jack Nerad with you, and it is news time, and I picked this out of the news. This is, I love road trips. I think you probably love road trips too. I know you've talked about them on the show, Chris, but this is a road trip beyond probably anything we'd ever contemplate. This is a pair of Scottish people. Chris and Julie Ramsey will attempt to become the first people to drive from the North Pole to the South Pole. They're actually driving from the magnetic North Pole, so not precisely the North Pole, but the magnetic North Pole to the South Pole. And they want to do it in a vehicle that we're going to talk about on the show, the Nissan Ariya. And picking an electric to do this, I mean, that's a head scratcher right there, isn't it, Chris?
It is, but for Nissan or for whomever, it's a great opportunity to show off what an EV can do, especially in those conditions, because, pretty cold up north. And then, there's going to be some roads and things that are missing along the way. So I'm interested to see how it turns out.
Yeah, I think once you leave the snowy, horrible climbs and, get into more normal things, for a long way, you can do pretty well. And then you run into some really bad weather again and some inability to charge. I mean, they completed the Mongol rally. That's a 10,000-mile rally in a Nissan Leaf. This is several years ago now, in 2017. So they're veterans of this. Oddly, they live in the center of the European petroleum industry in Aberdeen in Scotland. But they're doing this in an electric vehicle. And this vehicle has a range of around 300 miles on a charge. And they're not going to modify the powertrain, which I found fascinating too, because electrics really don't like the cold too much, do they?
They don't. You might end up with a reduced range, slower charging, a whole bunch of other things that could happen there too. But again, this is going to be a tough trip for them, so I hope they have some support.
Yeah, I mean, they do have a ton of support, including charging. I mean, you complain about the charging in Maine. I complain about the charging here in Southern California for different reasons, but they're building a portable wind turbine and solar panels to help them charge. I mean, I'm not sure that they're going to get a ton of electricity out of that setup. I think maybe some other things are also going to come into play there. There might even be some maybe diesel fuel running generators in the background or something like that. But they're going to start in Edmonton, Canada in February, and they'll be going to South America, the final leg after taking a flight. So not precisely a drive to Antarctica, but I don't think you can do that. So is that something you'd contemplate ever, Chris? Something you'd like to do?
If I had no rush and could stop and charge, or as you say, use solar panels and hang out with a generator for a little while, yeah, I would have absolutely no problem doing that. I mean, the world is changing, Jack, so I'm gonna have to get on board with it at some point and stop complaining about charging and do something about it.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, when you're charging, of course, you're using fossil fuels, but let's keep that in the background. So that's interesting. Here's an interesting thing too, and I'd love to have your comment on this, because this is a company called Haloride, and they plan to have virtual reality entertainment for the car, the in-vehicle entertainment market. They're a spin-off of Audi. Audi is going to be the first auto brand to feature this, and I'm just wondering about this. Maybe I'm a Luddite. Undoubtedly, I'm a Luddite, not maybe. But what's your take on all of this?
We've talked about this a bunch of times in the current automotive, I guess, landscape, if you want to call it that. We don't have driverless cars. There's no way to get in a car and go without you or someone being in control of it. And I can see where this technology is looking forward, right? Looking forward to the day when there's no steering wheel or gas pedal or anything for people to worry about. And you need something to do with your time, but we're not there yet. So these things sound really futuristic right now, and they would be if they were implemented. So it'll be interesting to see how they trickle this stuff in before we get to the point of driverless cars, or if we ever get to that point. But right now, I think it's too much, but we'll see.
They plan immersive VR entertainment experiences for passengers. The interesting thing is you're in a reality experience yourself while you're driving in the car, right? I mean, I'm not sure that I need an entertainment experience, but I think so many of us now want to be entertained 24/7, 365. I mean, I think if we could pump entertainment into our dreams, we would do it. It's interesting that this is going to appear next year. They introduced this. I thought this was amusing too. They introduced this not at an auto show or anything like that. They introduced it at South by Southwest. So,
well, that's likely their audience.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure that the folks at South by Southwest are always seeing reality. I think a lot of those people, maybe some of that stuff isn't real that they're seeing.
Well, I don't know. My wife doesn't appreciate me being on my phone when we're in the car together. I could not imagine wearing a headset while we're in the car together. That would probably not fly very far.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've gone on road trips and I'm the driver and everybody else is asleep, and you feel kind of, separated from the whole group in that kind of situation. I think if everybody were wearing virtual reality headsets as you were driving around, you'd probably feel, kind of equally separated and just the chauffeur, right?
Yeah, it would be a little lonely in the car.
Yeah. Well, here is news from a company that actually it's a company I worked for 30 years ago, Mazda. And they're planning to tweak their strategy yet again. This is something that Mazda does frequently. And their strategy had been kind of just thrown in a hat by a bunch of legislation from around the globe, including here in the United States. But they have a plan to have an EV strategy. At the same time, Mazda is going away from the zoom fun cars and introducing a lot of large SUVs. So that's their plan going forward. And it kind of makes sense because that's what people are actually buying. They're buying a lot more large SUVs than they're buying electric vehicles. But I mean, what's your take on that? Can Mazda pull that off?
I think they can. They're introducing some hybrid powertrains and things to go with that sort of shift to larger SUVs. It's going to take some getting used to for people like us. I think you and I have talked about this a bunch of times. The Mazda 3, even the outgoing or the previous Mazda 6, great fun cars to drive. And so it's going to be a change for us to look at Mazda and see a different image or see a different driving attitude there. But that's like you say, that is what people are buying. So they probably don't have much of a choice.
Yeah, and it's interesting the juxtaposition, right, of EV and then the large SUVs, large conventional SUVs. I mean, and I think a company is wise to pursue both these days, not just one or the other. And we see some companies doing one, some companies doing the other. We see some companies, General Motors strikes me as a company that's jumping with both feet into EVs. I mean, they're advertising EVs on TV right now that you can't buy and won't be able to buy for another 2 or 3 years. I really wonder, what Chevy dealers feel about that.
Yeah, all that interest is driving people's eyeballs to the Bolt and the Bolt EUV, which are on sale right now, and which you probably can't actually go to a dealership and buy. But you're right, you can't. Even the Hummer EV, which is out now, you can't. I think they're sold out for at least a year or two on that. So even the vehicles that are around are way down the road. So I can't wait to see, the end of next year. I think General Motors is going to have a big showing. Ford's going to have a great showing. It'll be interesting to see where Mazda lands. Others like Nissan, you're going to talk about the Ariya in a moment. So the approaches are all different speeds and all different directions. So I can't wait to see how they all pan out.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see, and we'll see whether the consumer can catch up with that, because I think in many cases, the manufacturers are way ahead of the consumer in the desire to adopt an electric vehicle. And we'll just have to see how that plays out. Well, when we play out in the next segment, we will have, I think, a pretty interesting bunch of road test vehicles for you. The Subaru BRZ, fun to drive, and the Nissan Ariya. I drove. I didn't drive it from the North Pole to the South Pole. I have to admit that. I did drive it in a little bit of cold weather, and it was rainy. But we will have that. So that's coming up when we come back. With Chris Teague, this is Jack Nerad with you. And thanks so much for being with us right here on America on the Road. Stay with us. Welcome back to America on the Road with Chris Teague, Jack Nerad with you. And it is road test time. And we have some, I think, real interesting vehicles this time around. I got so excited there, I barely could spit out the words. I'm so excited at the vehicles we're driving. The Subaru BRZ, I think an underrated car in a lot of ways. You were driving it. Tell us all about it.
I think it is a little bit underrated, but it's also really unique. You look at the market today and how many cars can you buy today with a manual transmission and rear wheel drive? I mean, you could probably count them on one hand, at least for less than $50,000. And that's what we have here. So I tested the Subaru BRZ. It's a 2023 model. It was all new for 2022, Jack. You probably remember this. They updated it with a newer, larger engine, better styling, and some better performance gear inside, which I'll get to in just a minute. The standard BRZ cost a little bit more than $28,500. My test car was the limited trim, which started at about 31 and came in at almost 33 after taxes and destination, all the stuff that comes with it. The new engine is a 2.4 liter 4-cylinder. It's a flat 4. It's paired with a 6-speed manual transmission. You can get an automatic in this car. I haven't tested it. I've heard that it's a solid automatic. So I guess if you needed that, you would have a good choice there. Wouldn't feel too bad about it. 228 horsepower, 184 pound-feet of torque, 0 to 60 in around 5.5 seconds. So that's an improvement over the previous generation. So the 2020, 2021, I think, which was around 205 horsepower. Jack, have you been behind the wheel of the BRZ or the Toyota GR86?
I have, and I like them a lot. And I think they are screaming deals right now. At that kind of pricing, that kind of fun. I don't know that this is a vehicle for everybody in this era where 2 doors and sports cars just don't seem to be the it thing. But boy, I think these are both the vehicles you identified, and the Subaru BRZ in particular, screaming deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you want to compare it to something that people might shop against it, like the Volkswagen GTI, I've got one of those in the driveway. The GTI feels more substantial. It feels more luxurious, I guess. But if you want the sports car feeling, you want to feel the steering wheel, you want to get the sort of butt and seat feel. You can hear the engine and feel it in your thighs when you're driving down the road. The BRZ, the Toyota GR86, they have that sort of raw feeling to them, which I don't think a lot of cars do. And on the other side of that, or the flip side of that, I guess, is that it's a little louder inside. There's more wind noise and engine noise. So not a luxury car, but you're probably not going to spend 30 grand on a sports car with two doors and expect to get like a Lexus experience. So inside, the standard BRZ comes with a cloth interior. The Limited has an Alcantara, like a synthetic suede feel to it. Really nice seats, very supportive. I'm a little too wide for this. I feel like this is the second car in the last 6 months I've told you that my rear is too wide for the seats. Maybe it's a sign that I need to go talk to my gym a little bit more. But the inside of this car is perfectly comfortable. There's surprising amount of storage in here. The cup holders are large. There's a good storage amount of storage in the doors, and it's got a lift up hatchback It does not have a lift up hatchback, even though it looks like it. But the trunk that slides underneath the rear seat is very spacious. You could take a couple of sets of golf clubs, a couple of suitcases. So two people could take this car on a weekend away and have no problems whatsoever. Inside, 8-inch display, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, 8 speakers. Jack, we talk about how tall I am on every show, and I'm going to go through this time. I'm 6 feet tall. This car, I would not try to fit car seats in the back of it. We put my kids in with booster seats, and even that was a little bit scrunchy. My 6-year-old had trouble fitting, and my 9-year-old could not fit at all. So I would just say, if you're going to use this as your weekend car, count on it being just kind of limited between you and one other person, or maybe just you with some suitcases in the car. So Jack, I took this thing on a road trip by myself, actually up the coast, a couple hours and back down. And I think it's a great fun car. For the money, if I had to spend, or if I wanted to spend money on a performance car, I'd probably get something like this, because it's easy to drive at the limit and you're not going to spend a bunch of money doing it.
Yeah, I just think it's such a value, and that kind of car, just you and the road a lot of times, find a great road, have a great car like that doesn't cost a ton of money, that you can kind of drive close to its limits a lot of times, and, just have fun with. It's not the fastest or, the best handling of all cars, but, it's just terrific fun. And, I'd love to have a vehicle like that.
Yeah, and for the people who love to do that sort of thing, the tuning aftermarket support for these cars is superb. People figured out how to turbocharge these engines. There's all sorts of suspension modifications. I don't have time to do that or a place to do it right now, but that was that's how I got into cars in the first place. And so it's all there if you want it.
Yeah. Well, I was driving the Nissan Ariya. And this is a vehicle that, in some ways, I think maybe a little bit of a missed opportunity for Nissan, because they were ahead of the game in electrics. Of course, they have had the Leaf in the market for a long time, and pretty well respected, a leader among the global automakers in electric vehicles. They were originally going to launch the Ariya in the United States in 2021. And then they didn't. I think we had a big disease and a lot of things were happening that stood in the way. But now they're launching, and it seems like they're playing catch up with a vehicle that I think is really terrific. And if it had been introduced 2 years ago, would have been groundbreaking. I think this is a really good vehicle. It is a compact SUV, crossover SUV, as so many of them are in being launched right now. EVs from a bunch of different places. From certainly Kia has one, Toyota has one, Volvo has one, Subaru even has one. So it seems like Nissan's playing catch up when they actually were leading, and it's just a darn good vehicle all the way around. It looks great, and on the outside, and the interior is just kind of a revelation. It is so minimalist and yet not stark, doesn't beat you up in any way. It seems cool. I mean, there's a lot of interesting touches to the interior. So it is coming out now. It is not cheap. Prices start at $43,000 or so. This is for the front drive trim. That's a lot of change for a compact SUV. Even a compact SUV EV, there's others that are less expensive than that, certainly. And you can get one that will run all the way up to $60,000 plus options. So a lot to think about there when it comes to value. But the priciest one has a pretty decent range and an all-wheel drive system that's really inventive. That brakes individual wheels, for example, things like that, that the typical all-wheel drive system will not do. The standard features, it has a list as long as a giraffe's neck. Really incredible. Optional 19-inch alloy wheels, frameless mirror, two-tone paint, floor mats, all kinds of stuff. Larger battery pack. You can go a lot of directions with this. As I say, a really interesting all-wheel drive system. It's one of those vehicles that's kind of a semi-coupe in a way. What's your take on the styling of the Ariya, Chris?
I like the styling. And to your point, if this thing had landed in 2021 or when they had actually planned for it to come out, it would have been groundbreaking. The styling would have been something that I want to say shame. That's not really the right word, but would have overshadowed some of the releases like the Ford Mustang Mach-E and would put it in line with like the Kia EV6, which is winning awards for its design and things like that. So the timing was a shame, but the design is beautiful. I haven't driven one, but I have seen one and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, they are good looking and good looking in person too. And I would say the interior even outdoes the exterior. It's just a terrific interior, very inventive. The designers went out of their way to avoid switches and knobs. Now, you know me, Chris, I'm an old guy and we like our switches and knobs. We like stuff we can actually grab onto. But I kind of gravitated to this too. They embedded controls into the display, the surrounding area. There's actually controls in the wood trim that have, haptic capacitive kind of feedback to them. It's not exactly like, grabbing a knob, but it gives you some kind of, something happened here. I touched something, and something should then take place because of that. It has a fold-out tray that can hold a laptop or a cheeseburger and fries. I prefer the latter too, but that's a great thing. And I don't understand why we don't see more inventive things like that from other automakers. That just makes so much sense. You throw your laptop down there and do a little work. You're charging your vehicle, sitting there, so you might as well do some work in it. It's got a big interior because it can be so roomy because of the drivetrain. I mean, everything's out at the corners. There's nothing intrusive. They have even moved the air conditioning under what would otherwise be, I guess it's still the hood, but where the engine would be, so you don't have that in the cabin. Just a very versatile cabin. And they have good infotainment. Homegrown Nissan system, I think, is quite a good one. Big 12.3-inch digital display. And then they have a digital display of the same size for instrumentation. So you have this real wide screen look, very clean, very good looking. Over-the-air updates for all this stuff, Apple CarPlay and all that stuff as well. They also use a lot of voice recognition, which I think is really wise. And you and I probably, I certainly had problems with voice recognition early on. These days, I'm really coming to terms with it and using it a lot. What's your take on that?
I am too, and we talk about all the innovations too, wireless Apple CarPlay, those sorts of things. They're all becoming much better. I wrote an article this morning about how I actually enjoy using wireless Apple CarPlay more than wired now. So these things are coming. And to your point from earlier, Nissan did a great job capitalizing on the EV form factor, right? They don't need a transmission tunnel. They don't need all these things inside the car. So they made some innovative changes and some neat things that would actually make you feel special using the car. So good for them.
Yeah, good stuff. Of course, a ton of advanced driver assistance systems, which you would expect, including a new version of ProPilot Assist, which is the highway driving assist program. You can actually use this hands-free as long as you're paying attention, and it pays attention to you to make sure that you're paying attention to the car. So that is good. It'll work even on single-lane roads. Which is a bit of a leap of faith. I mean, often they're on divided highways where the oncoming traffic is not right in your face if something goes wrong. I think that's pretty innovative, of course. And then it has ProPilot Park. It'll park itself if you let it. So yeah, I'm not sure it can find a parking place on its own, but I just think this is a really good vehicle. reasonable amounts of range. It depends on the size of the battery pack. Maybe not the most range, maybe not the most horsepower, not the fastest in a straight line, but I think this is still a really excellent vehicle. I can't wait to drive one with this e-Force all-wheel drive system. I drove a front drive model, and the first models will be front drive, but I think it's going to be just a big hit out there.
Yeah, I think it's a great first effort, and not first effort because they already had an EV on the market, but a great recent first effort. How about that? And if it's indicative of the next few that we're going to see from them, I can't wait to see what they're going to be, because I think that even a stripped down or less fancy version of this, or a smaller version of this, would be a good seller. If they can hit the $40,000 price point, then they'll be off to the races.
Yeah, well, pretty good. And I think it'll be between $40,000 and $60,000. You can probably run one up to $70,000. Well, I have to see how that plays out too, because this is not going to be built in America either, and so the pricing is shaky with all that. But that's going on. When we come back, we have a great interview for you. Mark Bole is Vice President and Head of Battery Solutions for General Motors, and he has some solutions for your house, maybe for your house, your 200 or 300-year-old house, Chris. So stay with us for that. And thanks so much for being with us right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road. Jack Nerad with you, and we have a terrific guest. This is a really interesting subject I want to dive into. Mark Bole is Vice President and Head of Battery Solutions for General Motors, and you've got an interesting thing, not necessarily even vehicle-oriented, although there's some vehicle to it, of course. Thanks so much for being with us. Tell us what's going on. This is exciting.
It is exciting, Jack, and thanks for your time. Appreciate being with you. Yeah, we're announcing today GM Energy, which is a new business unit within General Motors. It's really going to offer products and services that provide a holistic and comprehensive ecosystem of energy management for our customers. There's going to be 3 areas specifically. One is going to be called Ultium Home, which is for our residential customers. One is Ultium Commercial for businesses and fleet customers. And then the third is Ultium Charge 360, which is our public infrastructure already existing brand, which maybe you're familiar with already. All of these areas are really meant to drive growth for General Motors beyond the core vehicle portfolio, but really be linked specifically to the EV. And it's very relevant at this point in time, too, as I think about the resiliency needs of the U.S. electric grid, which we can talk a little bit about. It certainly is important with some of the weather-related issues that have been going on lately, what's happening in California, historically in Texas, currently in Florida. Some of the solutions that we'll provide, smart charging solutions for EVs, backup power solutions for your homes and your businesses, we are turning the EV into something beyond just a mode of transportation to really have the EV batteries be a source of power for you and for your home.
Yeah, really exciting stuff. And of course, GM has branded Ultium, spent a lot of time pushing that brand out there. Different kind of technology than some others in the space, and I think that will continue to evolve, right? I mean, but describe to us, especially for a consumer customer. I imagine most of our listeners are consumers and wondering, what does this mean to me? Tell us what it does mean to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Jack. Let's give an example for a retail customer in their home. So with the launch of the retail EV Silverado, which is in the fourth quarter of 2023, we'll be providing a suite of home energy management products, we're calling it. And so again, the EV can actually link into the home. Currently, when you buy an EV, you have unidirectional charging. And so from the utility, you get your electricity, it goes into your vehicle. The key behind this really is something we call bidirectionality. So it's not just charging the battery in your EV, but it's actually discharging power from your EV into your home. And so with other hardware that we'll be able to supply late next year, which one would be a home hub, another one could be stationary storage actually on the side of your home. And also we're working with SunPower, which is one of the largest solar companies here in the United States, to provide solar services that would allow EV consumers and home consumers to use renewable solar energy for powering their EV battery or powering their home. And so what we'll be doing is providing a software platform in addition to that hardware to really make all of that energy management seamless for those residential customers. So you have a mobile app and you'll say, today I'm going to work, I need 50 miles on my EV, but I'm willing to charge whenever you tell me it's the best time to charge. And so through the software that we have, we will work with your local utility and decide the best time for you to charge overnight, early in the morning, so that you're actually filling up your EV battery with a cheaper cost of energy. Again, if we can combine that with solar and a stationary storage pack on the side of your home, then you can use renewable energy and really have a sustainable energy source for your EV and for your home.
Yeah, and sometimes that solar even goes back into the grid, right? And is it possible that some of this power will go back into the electrical grid?
Jack, absolutely. And resiliency of the electrical grid is important. And so what I described before was what we call V2H, which is vehicle to home. The other aspect of the bidirectionality, difficult word, but okay. The bidirectionality is vehicle to grid. And so local utilities, as they're working on peak demand and want to shave their peak demands and manage, again, their energy needs for their customers in a very resilient and consistent manner, there may be times of the day when they say, hey, could you supply energy back to the electric grid and allow us to manage that peak that we're expecting? And so working with the utilities and being an interface and working with many, many, many EV and residential customers, we can actually aggregate the energy from those homes and from those EV batteries and work with the utility in a kind of behind the scenes, very consistent manner to provide sources of energy for that utility and then provide some savings to our customers because the utilities are willing to pay for that.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, electricity is a very fragile commodity, right? I mean, mostly it has to be used as it's being created. Storage is an issue. Certainly, batteries are the way to store it, or a way to store it that's traditionally been out there, and they're getting better and better. Having a home storage, home battery, I imagine, a fairly large capacity home battery gives you some backup should the grid go down. I live in Southern California. We've had threats of that happening, fairly recently, and kind of ironically, actually, when it did happen. So tell us a bit more about that, how this is all going to work together.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, the battery in your vehicle is a source of storage too, right? And so by connecting the EV and linking it through this bidirectional charger, which we can supply you with, and then managing it in the software platform that we'll put together, you'll be able to also use the battery in your car to power the home. So if there's a power outage, seamlessly, you'll be able to be powering your home through your EV battery. Now, if your EV is not parked in your garage or you don't have an EV, we also, as GM Energy, supply the stationary storage for the side of your house. And so it's another form of battery storage in addition to your EV battery or instead of your EV battery that we could supply to the home, again, linked to solar, if that's what you prefer as a customer, that would allow you to get renewable and sustainable energy for free, basically, from the sun.
Well, it strikes me this implies that battery capacity in vehicles will get larger and larger over time, or more capacity, maybe not heavier, but more capacity, certainly. Is that something we're going to see where we will see the fact that vehicles might have some excess energy that they could pump back into the house at times?
Well, and what we're seeing too from consumers is range anxiety is still important for EVs, yet people usually drive their EVs, say 30 to 40 miles, and so a day. And so there actually is extra capacity in that battery given your use of that vehicle. And so along with the planning tools that we'll give you, we can say, hey, it's Wednesday. We've seen for the past 7 Wednesdays, you've only driven 30 miles to work and back. Your battery can hold more than that. If there is a need for the grid to have additional power, will you allow us, GM Energy, to give that capacity back to the utility and create some energy savings for you as a customer?
Right. And the battery can then be replenished at a proper time,
right,
when it's less expensive to replenish, and largely it's invisible to you as the consumer, right?
No, and that is our absolute goal, to create this seamless, invisible recommendation to our consumers that, hey, press this button and we will really help you with your energy cost management.
Right. Well, we've talked about weather issues. Certainly we had weather issues in Texas. I have 2 daughters in the Dallas-Fort Worth area who went through a freeze out and failure of the electrical grid. We've had that threatened here in Southern California. I don't think it has anything to do necessarily with the Nerad family, but it seems to follow us. I don't really have any relatives right now in Florida, and Florida is experiencing, horrible aftermath of hurricane. That begs a lot of questions, I think, about stored energy, what you do. I mean, we're so dependent on our energy. Walk me through, especially a situation like the hurricane aftermath, where GM Energy can be of use.
Yeah, and there's an interesting story, actually, of a community that is 100% solar in Central Florida that actually survived this and then continued through their solar and their stationary storage, which had stored energy, continue to have electricity in the aftermath of the hurricane, which is amazing. And so Again, if the solar panel on your roof is there and the stationary storage remains on the side of your home, you can disconnect from the grid and, in a sense, be grid independent. And you could create what we call in the energy space a microgrid. And so if you go for either an hour or multiple days, by having that stationary storage on the side of your home filled with energy that is sourced either from the electric grid or from solar, you can provide that resiliency to your home and be in a much better position when these weather-related events occur. Jack, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, as I was looking at the aftermath of what happened in Florida, tragic from Hurricane Ian, it also struck me that having internal combustion engine vehicles that could get around in the absence of electricity from the grid, the grid failed right across the board there in a lot of places. And, I've been through hurricanes with my mother in years past in northern Florida and gone through the same thing. So there has to be some kind of, as we move toward an all electric future of transportation, we have to deal with that situation too. And I think probably you're thinking about that very hard, aren't you?
No, absolutely. And another example I saw on YouTube the other day, again in Florida, very unfortunate, but a consumer who had an EV in their garage also had a stationary storage box on the side of their home. They had solar on their roof, and they were actually filming with water all around their house that their car was still being charged by the stationary storage, the energy that they had stored in the side of their home. And so we are providing a solution for some of these weather events, absolutely. And it's not only for residential customers, it's for businesses too.
Yeah. And is there some potential of having kind of emergency service charging ability, mobile charging that will get a lot of vehicles up and running? Should we run into that situation where, say, 50, 90% of the vehicles are electric vehicles going forward?
No, and actually there is a lot of white space in this energy ecosystem. And even within GM and talking to other partners, we've started to talk about, we don't have these products or services yet, but exactly what you're mentioning, this mobile charging units, which could basically be large batteries on wheels that in fact could be brought into emergency situations and be support. GM has a real history in working in those kind of situations with our OnStar connectivity. And so combining those two pieces together is a future product and service that certainly we can think about and bring to market.
We don't have a ton of time left, but talk a little bit about Ultium Commercial and how businesses and other commercial entities can participate.
And Jack, a lot of the same things that we've talked about, providing the resiliency to your home, it's important for a business too. We have many of our fleet customers currently who say, hey, we want to electrify our fleets, we want to electrify our businesses, but they really don't understand what that means. And they understand buying the vehicle, but they don't understand how do we put the charging infrastructure in place? How do we build resiliency with stationary storage? And one of the future products too that we'll have is a commercial stationary storage unit, which actually has chargers attached. So if you have a power outage, not only could that large stationary storage unit supply power to your business, but you would be ensured that you actually could use it to charge up your EV fleet as you go to the electrification. And so for commercial businesses specifically, we really will be providing a strategic advisor role as much as a seller of hardware and software. We'll be there to guide you on what the best options are, what's unique for you, and we'll be with you from day one to day 101, because every day we'll be there to help you manage your energy services through our software solutions.
We're seeing advances in energy and battery technology, certainly battery technology. Are we seeing similar advances in solar and other renewable? Are they getting better? Are they getting more efficient? I'm thinking a solar array that's going to solve the problem for a commercial fleet is going to be one hell of a big solar array, right?
Yeah, no, and we've seen a lot of advancements over the last few years, both in the cost and the service of solar units. And so, yes, they are much more effective than they were, say, 5 years ago. Another reason why we're partnering with SunPower, because they are an expert in solar. Although GM has a ton of expertise in battery technology, and it's important here, we don't have the expertise in solar, which is why it's important for us to partner with SunPower, which we are.
Right. Well, terrific stuff. I wish we had more time to talk about this, Mark, because it's fascinating stuff, and I think we're just scratching the surface, but all of this stuff is available. How would our listeners find out more?
There's a GM Energy website. You can go on there and sign up, and we'll be in touch with you soon. So again, thank you very much, Jack, for talking to us. We're extremely excited today and look for a lot from us in 2023.
They'll get in touch with us, but nobody will tell me that I have $7,000 from the federal government. allowing me to put solar panels on my roof.
We're working to make sense of that too for our customers. So some opportunities there.
Okay, very good. Well, Mark Bole, Vice President and Head of Battery Solutions at General Motors, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it. I learned a lot. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for your time. Take care.
And stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road with Chris Teague. This is Jack Nerad with you, and it's listener question time. We love to take your listener questions, and I think, Chris, you have a good one for us this week. I think it's something a lot of people are dealing with. What's the question?
Yeah, so this one's from Chester in Bend, Oregon, Jack. And Chester says he's shopping for new cars, and he's seeing that there still aren't very many out there on dealers' lots, but he felt like the shortage would be over with by now. We've been doing this for a while now. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us thought, okay, this is a short-term thing. We're going to see inventory shortages because factories were shut down during COVID. And that seems like so far back in the rearview mirror, at least for me. And yet we're still running into inventory shortages, and they're out there. I mean, this is real. What Chester is experiencing is absolutely real. I was just talking to my friends at J.D. Power recently, and they say that the inventory shortages this year are worse than last year. Maybe there was some backlog last year and they haven't been able to catch up. But this has been a very tough year for inventory, and it's had many, many effects on dealers and on pricing and just a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, it's tough to find almost any new model. You know, looking at the dealership down the street from me, that's a Hyundai dealership. They've got, I think, 2 brand new Tucsons sitting on the lot and a couple of Santa Fe's, and then a whole lot of used cars. So we're still looking at coming out of this where we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is that used cars have gone down in value a little bit, or in general. I mean, they're not quite priced the way they were in the midst of this inventory shortage, but we're still seeing big time inventory shortages of new vehicles, and thus many people are paying well over sticker for the vehicle that they're buying. And, that's difficult to swallow, isn't it?
Yeah, we spent many, many years telling people to avoid rolling negative equity into their next car loan. And now we're looking at people taking on that equity right at the dealer without even a trade. So it's going to be a tough when they go to sell those things down the road, I think.
Right. Well, I think that's our show for this week, and so glad that you're not as grievously injured as we thought you were, Chris, and glad that you're back on the show. We appreciate it.
Well, I'm going to try to complete a whole month with no sicknesses or injuries, but thanks everybody for listening. I'll say if you like what you heard, check out the sportsmapradio.com website. There you can find us on the Saturday morning schedule. You can find our podcast on all the major platforms, as well as a formatted radio version of the show.
Right. And please look for my new book, Dance in the Dark. It's on Amazon right now. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a fun read and maybe a nice Christmas gift for somebody out there. And thanks so much for being with us right here on America on the Road. We do appreciate it. And join us again next week for another edition of America on the Road.